In November of 1965, American and North Vietnamese forces met on the battlefield for the first major ground conflict of the Vietnam War. The Battle of Ia Drang was actually two separate conflicts, only one of which was actually in the Ia Drang Valley. The Americans sought to establish two helicopter landing zones, codenamed LZ X-Ray and LZ Albany. This led to 4 days of intense fighting, setting a bloody precedent for the rest of the war. When Lyndon B. Johnson became president after Kennedy's assassination in 1963, he immediately began to escalate American involvement in Vietnam. In 1964, the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution established that Johnson had the power to, quote, take all necessary measures to repel any armed attack against the United States and prevent further aggression, end quote. In other words, Johnson had the emergency powers to begin escalation as he saw fit. In the summer of 1965, American troops began amassing to launch an invasion of Vietnam in support of the South Vietnamese. Around the same time, North Vietnamese forces had begun a major siege of the U.S. Special Forces camp at Plei My. When the attacking forces were pushed back with American air support, U.S. command decided to take advantage of their momentum and push the North Vietnamese out of the region entirely. After determining the positions of NVA regiments preparing for a second assault on Plei My, Generals Larson and Knowles made plans to launch an air assault near the Chu Prong Mountain. After determining that the NVA did not have the anti-air guns in place to prevent American landing, the locations of the landing zones were decided on. On November 13th, Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore was assigned to lead the troops with explicit instructions not to attempt to scale the mountains. On the morning of November 14th, the 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry, began landing their troops at LZ X-Ray. The soldiers of B Company, under command of Captain John Herron, distracted the NVA forces from beginning their assault on Plei My. The majority of the American troops stayed at the landing zone, ready to reinforce the numerous small groups that went out to secure the greater area. Shortly after they began to establish the LZ, an NVA deserter was captured, revealing that there were more NVA forces hiding along the mountain, outnumbering the American force of 200 by roughly 8-1. The next two deployments of American troops arrived respectively about 30 minutes and 50 minutes after the previous. It wasn't until shortly after noon that the first shots rang out. Within an hour, 3 platoons were under heavy fire from hidden NVA forces. As the 2nd platoon under Lieutenant Henry Herrick pursued some of the retreating NVA troops, they were cut off from the rest of the Americans. The 2nd platoon held off against swarms of NVA troops at first, but was soon overwhelmed. After Lieutenant Herrick and the next 2 in the chain of command were killed, Sergeant Ernie Savage took up command simply because he was closest to the radio. Savage managed to call in artillery support just in time. The 2nd platoon managed to hold their position for the remainder of the battle, losing 8 men with 13 wounded. As the battle went on, numerous other heroic actions were performed by American forces. While I would love to go into more detail on them, I don't have the time right now. Nonetheless, I highly recommend you look up some of their stories from the battle. Late that afternoon, 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry arrived to reinforce LZ X-Ray. As the night began, American troops circled up to make secure camp for the night. Although NVA forces probed for the Americans throughout the night, the Americans held fire so as to conceal their position. At dawn of the following day, the first ever B-52 bombing run was carried out along the slopes of Chu Prong. Just an hour later, Americans pushed back a 3-pronged assault from the NVA. One soldier, Specialist Willard Parrish, was noted for defending his foxhole against over 100 NVA soldiers, using up all of his M60 machine gun ammunition and resorting to his Colt 1911 sidearm. When the NVA attack intensified, the code phrase, "Broken Arrow," was transmitted, requesting all American aircraft to reinforce them immediately. Amidst the chaos of the battle, Lieutenant Colonel Moore's command was hit by a friendly fire from a napalm bomb, accidentally dropped too close. By 10 o'clock, American reinforcements began to arrive. By the afternoon, the fighting had died down and B-52s carried out bombing runs on the NVA forces in the surrounding forests. At 4 in the morning of the 16th, the NVA launched one final assault on LZ X-Ray, split into 4 waves. Each one was pushed back by the American forces, and X-Ray was secured by 8:30 the same morning. On the morning of November 17th, American troops secretly evacuated LZ X-Ray to make way for B-52s to carry out a series of bombing runs, clearing the way for taking LZ Albany. American forces marching towards LZ Albany noticed signs that the MVA troops had previously been there, notably, quote, Ho Chi Minh sandal foot markings, bamboo arrows on the ground, matted grass and grains of rice, end quote. Around 1300, the Americans were ambushed by NVA forces on all sides. Amidst the following 16 hours of intense fighting, numerous American helicopters arrived to deploy reinforcements and evacuate wounded troops. By the morning of the 18th, Americans had secured LZ Albany as well. After the battle was over, General Westmoreland arrived on the battlefield to be briefed on the battle by Hal Moore. Although the landing zones were secured, it's difficult to say who exactly won the battle. The Americans suffered a nearly 50% casualty rate, while the North Vietnamese undoubtedly suffered heavier casualties. Nonetheless, the North Vietnamese realized, based on their performance at Ia Drang, that they had a chance at winning the war. With nearly 500 American casualties and 1,000 to 1,700 NVA casualties, Ia Drang was just the first taste of the horrible carnage that would characterize the Vietnam War. As the Vietnam War is still within living memory, we as historians have a unique and limited opportunity to learn from first-hand sources. I strongly advise you to go out and ask your relatives about it. The Vietnam War strikes a nerve with me in particular, as the Americans who served were never welcomed home. I would like to take this opportunity to extend my own welcome home to all Vietnam veterans, and I ask that you do the same. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Late Modern History for inside information, behind the scenes, and sneak peeks at upcoming videos. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. This is Matthew, and I hope to see you next time.
Goodbye, goodbye, where's the dear baby dear from your eye? Going past to pass, I know, I'll be sick of the death to go, don't cry, don't die. There's a silver lining in the sky. Bonsoir, old thing, cheerio, chin chin, na boo, toodaloo, goodbye.